Good afternoon. Hi, welcome. It is December 2nd, 2022, and I'm Jason Lipfeld, and this is the Hostos Student Leadership Academy Friday Ambassador Workshop Series. It's really a joy and privilege today to be able to be with you and to have our guest, who is an alumni of Hostos and the Student Leadership Academy and a CUNY grad, and now studying at Georgetown University. Michael Cruz, I met even before he was a student at the college. He had family members who graduated and were at the college at the time. When he came to Hostos, he had plans of joining the Global Scholars Program, and now I'm talking too much, probably taken away from his presentation. And since the Global Scholars Program was not in existence at that time, he invested his time in the worthy consideration of being a member of the Hostos Student Leadership Academy and serving in the Hostos Student Government Association, amongst other things. As many people will tell you, including our guest, Felix Sanchez, who's here from the Alumni Relations Office, he is well regarded by faculty and staff, administration, even counts the chancellor as one of his mentors. And so I will, without further ado, I will turn it over to my good friend and somebody who I truly feel blessed to know, Michael Cruz.
Thank you, Jason, for your kind words. It's an honor and a privilege to be here with you all. I always feel at home when I come back to Hostos, especially when I address students, who are members of the Leadership Academy, which I hold in high esteem and high regard. Some of the best memories I have were at the Academy, and I learned so much. And I'm happy to be here today to talk to you a little bit about my time at Hostos and beyond. And all the things I learned at the Academy, I've been able to use throughout the rest of my academic and professional career. And, till this day, I use a lot of the skills I learned at the Academy. So pay attention to what Jason tells you. I know he can be a little grouchy sometimes, but he means well. So I'm going to attempt to share my screen here and then see if we can do an activity. Technology is great when it works. So hopefully the technology gods will, look kindly on us. Let's see, sharing. Okay. If I could get a heads up if you can see my PowerPoint.
Can't see.
No, I can see it now.
Okay, great. So today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about my journey. So originally, I always talk about my journey to the Peace Corps, right? But that has since expanded to my journey to the Foreign Service. And all this, basically the genesis of my love for service, I owe a lot to that experience, to being at the Academy, because the Academy exposed me to what service means. First, at a grassroots level in my community, right? Especially the South Bronx, because I am born and raised in the South Bronx. I'm from Highbridge, which is historically the poorest congressional district in the United States. And that had a big influence on me, right? Growing up around poverty, seeing how our elected officials had failed us many times. And I knew that I wanted to be a change agent. I just didn't know what that was going to look like. So I would say in great part, its inception was at Hostos. So I'm going to talk to you about the positive impact of volunteering in the community and around the world. So like Jason said, my name is Michael Cruz, and I attended Hostos from 2010 to 2012. And let's try to do this activity, right? I want us to think about what you do when you have a problem. I'm saying top 10, but if we could get a top 5, I'm gonna share a whiteboard, and let me know if you're gonna be able to write on this board. But like I said, it'll be great if it works. If not, we'll just use the chat. Let's see. It's getting all fancy on me now. Let me stop this share. Okay. Can you see this?
Yes, we can.
Okay, let me know if you can use the toolbar on, it's probably going to be on your left-hand side. And the first one is a option to draw. And I want you to share, what are your go-tos when you have a problem? Like, what do you do? How do you address it? What are your options? Okay, I'm saying go for a walk. I think Jose shared that. Again, if you're having issues with the whiteboard, you can always try the chat. I speak with my mother or a counselor. Great, Kimberly. I see in the chat, I meditate. That's always a very good option. If you can't do anything on the phone, then try the chat box, please. I stay by myself. So gather your thoughts. That can be good. I read a quote recently that said, anything that brings balance is medicine. So I think it's a wise thing to say, anything you do in excess is bad, right? So I think being by yourself can be good as long as you don't do it for too long, right? Gathering your thoughts is important. Some introspection is good. Back when I was in Peace Corps, they would give us this 3-day rule. Like, if you need to be by yourself, 3 days max. After 3 days, it's probably time to leave your room. Yes, introspection. I stay by myself, I exercise. Exercise is good, right? So you can multitask. You can still gather your thoughts, but it's being productive, and you can also get those endorphins afterwards, which makes you feel really good. Talk. Okay, well, Jason's a talker, as we know. He likes to go on those tangents sometimes. Consult parents. Yes, it's always good to seek counsel from people in our inner circle, people that we look up to. Okay, the reason you stay by yourself is because you don't know who to talk to.
You can talk to me.
Yeah, I was gonna say that you can talk to Jason. Jason's a good sounding board, and he's not judgmental. So I could say that about him. I listen to music. I listen to music too. I listen to music so much. Now that Spotify does that wrapped thing for the year, oh my God, so many hours I spend listening to music. And I think this year, most of the #1 artist for most people was Bad Bunny. So, okay, I think we have a good list here. So we're going to revisit this list at the end. I just wanted to warm up the chat, warm up this board. And I'm gonna try to save it. And
I think I saved it, Mike.
okay. Do you know how to turn it off? Okay, great. Teamwork makes the dream work. All right. Let's go back to the PowerPoint. Can everyone see that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Awesome. So like I said, we're going to revisit this. I feel like we pretty much got close to top 10 if we didn't. And then we're going to talk about the potential for an alternative to those options. So a little bit about me. Like I said, I'm native from the Bronx, Highbridge, South Bronx. I'm also New Yorican. My family's from Puerto Rico. And in my former life, I worked in retail and customer service for about 10 years. And I attended college about 3 times. I just wasn't ready. I was figuring myself out. I had to get comfortable in my own skin. And I really needed to figure out what I wanted to study, what I wanted to do with my life. And Jason talked about this a little bit, but back in 2007, there was still a program called the Global Scholars Program. My brother actually was fortunate enough to participate in that program. And it was a pipeline to Columbia University. And it's interesting because it's very similar to what I'm doing now. It was ultimately geared at international affairs and helping people work in diplomacy or something international, right? So I kind of knew that I wanted to do that, but I wasn't sure. And I ended up taking one class, actually an English class. And a lot of stuff happened that semester in my life that I stopped going to class. I had a lot of family stuff going on that took the focus away from my studies. And I ultimately ended up getting a D in that class. Fast forward to 2010, and they tell me, guess what? You can't be a full-time student. You're on academic probation. Your GPA is too low. You only had that one class, right? So at first I was a little devastated, but I didn't let it deter me. I used it, right, to fuel me like, look, I'm just gonna take these 2 classes. I'm gonna ace these classes and I'm gonna be back. So I returned part-time. I was working full-time. and I aced both those classes. So I was able to rebound, and that's where my academic journey began at Hostos. Just want to talk a little bit about the academy, right? It taught me the importance of public service, especially the importance of networking. The peer mentoring was crucial because the students that were a semester ahead of me, a year ahead of me, they basically told me all the ins and outs of the landscape, right? I had to learn the lay of the land. But in terms of networking, I feel like Jason created a networking monster with me. So he got me my first set of business cards, and I use business cards to this day. Everywhere, every job I move to, every new school I go to, I have a brand new set of business cards. And usually you get a pack, you get 500 of them. And believe me, you're not gonna run out of them, basically. So just give them to everyone and make sure to ask people for their business cards. And I think one important thing to do is email the person. I try to email the person at least within 24 hours so that they sort of have an idea of who I am. They might remember the conversation we had. And I think that that's crucial, right? You want people to remember you, remember what you talked about, so that if you reach out to them again, they sort of have an idea who they're talking to, right? The Academy also takes you to really, really great conferences, really, really great experiences. And I was talking to Jason about this earlier, in this post-COVID world, we're still transitioning back to in-person events, but I know that that should be happening next semester. Take advantage of every single conference event you can go, whether it's CUNY-wide or some other place, just make sure to take advantage of those opportunities. So in this picture, I'm actually with the Chancellor. He is one of my mentors, and that's the former President, Sandra May, and the former VP, VP Cruz. Also, Model UN. Model UN was it was a pivotal experience because I'm actually going to be a diplomat, right? So you get to see what diplomats do, right? Because the United Nations has diplomats, right? Every country, every state that has a representation at the UN sends a delegation, which are ultimately diplomats. There's one in New York and there's one in DC. So I went to the one in New York, and then I was fortunate enough to go back as head delegate. So the first time we went in the simulation, we acted in behalf of Burkina Faso. And then in the second experience I had, it was Haiti that we were representing. So this is some of the pictures of me in DC, and also here in New York City. Okay, I wanted to share a video. Let's see if it works. Just a little bit about the prep that goes into Model UN. So Jason's really good at doing a crash course for us, just to prep us for the types of things that we would do in Model UN. And it also helps with your public speaking skills. You also learn about parliamentary procedures, right? Which I talked to you a little bit about if you signed on early. I talked about the importance of parliamentary procedure, especially when, you have people with conflicting thoughts and ideas, and sometimes conversations will get a little bit heated. Having things like speakers time is really important to be productive, to have productive conversation. Let's see if this works. Can folks see this Facebook screen?
Yeah, we can.
Okay, let's see. Let's see if the sound comes through.
Greetings, honorable delegates, honorable chair. Our proposal is to build 7 new factories that will strengthen dramatically our economical infrastructure. By doing so, we might compromise our environment, but justify the means. So this financial boom, this economic stability will then allow us to tackle any environmental issues that may be a byproduct of such factors. So I've already had the pleasure to speak to many of you concerning our proposal, and I count with your support. And just to name a few, we have Vivian George, Cruz, Everly. So I encourage all of you to join us in looking at a strong financial future for our beloved country. Thank you very much.
So that's some of the public speaking skills that you will gain if you participate in Model UN. Can folks see my PowerPoint?
Yes.
Okay, so some of the great opportunities, and again, I know this is in flux because this is the before times, and I know Jason is working to rebuild a lot of the activities and functions that the Academy, participated in prior to COVID. But some of the great things we did in our local community was like My Park Day, where you do park beautification, you plant trees, you clean the park. There's a local park up the street on the concourse that we would go to. MLK Day, which is coming up in January. We would always participate, usually in a CUNY-wide activity. Same goes for the 9/11 Day of Service. And then we would always visit a nursing home. For the holidays, we would go to the RFK Community Center in Brooklyn. So it would usually be around this time in December. I don't know if you all did Feeding NYC, which is recent, and for Thanksgiving week. And all of these activities, I really felt like I was bitten by that community service bug. And that's where it all started for me. That was the genesis. And here's some of the things we did. So, Isabella is a nursing home in Washington Heights, Inwood area. And then that's park cleanup at the local park up the block from Hostos. And some of the Feeding NYC that I mentioned that we did. I used to do that every year. We used to have to go like at 6 in the morning. It was great though. So I'm sure a lot of you have heard of the Malala Leadership Academy or CUNY Corps. That's really a good way to participate also in things like CUNY Citizenship Now, where I helped people apply for citizenship, fill out their M400 applications. I was fortunate enough to get an award for that. I also participated in things like Habitat for Humanity. So it was an alternate spring break. They actually took us up to Syracuse. I did that 2 years in a row. That was a really great experience to also do something for communities, right? To help underserved communities. It was about 3 days out of my spring break, and it was a very rewarding experience. One of the things I can't stress enough is to study abroad, right? I had a passport for 2 years. I never used it, right? Just having a passport in and of itself is gonna get you started. I recommend, even if you don't have a trip planned, go out there and get your passport, because opportunities will come up. And if you don't have a passport, you're not ready, right? So I think just to take that first step, right? To speak things into existence, to manifest things, or if you want to call it the law of attraction, whatever you want to call it, I think it's important to act as if things are, even if they aren't yet. So I participated in a study abroad trip to Brazil, and I used an e-permit. I went with one of the other CUNY schools, Medgar Evers, because I really knew that I wanted to go to Brazil. And even though Hostos has some great opportunities to study abroad. They weren't going where I wanted to go. So I figured out how to do it, right? And at the time, I was able to use some of my Pell Grant to pay for the courses, right? So I took 2 courses. I took a course in Introduction to Portuguese, and I took an Afro-Brazilian history course. And I got help through that funding, right? Because I went to a CUNY institution, I went, in-state, I was able to use my Pell to pay for those 2 courses. Then I think I was very intentional. I knew that I wanted to do Peace Corps, and I knew that I wanted to build my resume. So I did get that international exposure, right, by going to Brazil, but I wanted to up the ante, up my game. And I was like, I need to do some type of service because I know I want to do service. Don't know exactly what that means yet, but I know I want it to be an international focus. So I participated in this 4-week urban farming initiative in Santo Domingo, Dominican Republic. So we worked with a local NGO. We worked with the Dominican think tank called Fungloe and the Ministry of Agriculture. And that was back in the summer of 2012. I also had to write a 15-page research paper, which was, part of the reason I was getting a grade for this experience. And I wrote it on gender roles in the Dominican Republic. So, I think Jason will probably talk about this a little bit, but I was able to get this fully funded by Hostos at the time. At the time, I was very intentional about who I had, basically relationships with, connections with. I was very much involved in student government and very active on campus. And at the time, I, had built a strong rapport with VP Sherwood. I was very intentional about that too, though. I can't say, though she is a great person, I also knew who she was and, what kind of clout she had. And I knew that at some point I might be asking for some type of help. So I made sure that she knew who I was and that she saw me in action. She knew that I had a reputation on campus. But I must say that you also should be very intentional about these things, right? Like, know who has clout, who are the movers and the shakers, or who holds the purse strings at an institution. I think it's important because when you come knocking, they'll know who you are and they'll also know what you've done, right? They know what you've done for the community. They know what you've done for the institution at large. So, I basically went to her with a proposal and I told her, this is what I want to do. This is why I want to do it. And, she read it, she looked at it. She's like, Michael, you're a good kid. I want this to happen for you. So what do we have to do? And, they basically cut me a check, which I then walked over to CCNY. And I was able to use some of the funding from one of the other scholarships from like Circle of 100, which sometimes, and again, I'm not at Hostos right now, so you can't, quote me on all these things, but you have to do your research. So I was able to get $500 through the Circle 100 funding, which I was able then to use for airfare. So definitely use the resources, but also do like your own research, right? Go to the CUNY website. There's a lot of links there to resources. Ask Jason for that booklet where they talk about all of the scholarships under the sun, right? And go to things like, I don't know what it's called now. It used to be called Single Stop in my day. But use the resources on campus. CUNY has a lot of resources. Hostos has a lot of resources. They want students to participate in experiences like this. They want you to grow. They want you to have a holistic education. So don't be afraid to ask questions. Ask questions, find out. It's called One Stop now. Great. Sometimes it's about sending an email. just asking questions, knocking on people's doors. The worst they can tell you is no, and then you just keep on going. So this is more about service learning, some more pictures, some of the volunteers that participated with us. And then these are some of the participants showing, some of the gardening that they did, how they were able to use this towards their livelihood. Not only did they, use these vegetables to consume themselves, but they also sold them, so they were able to make profit. And then going back to the importance of networking, I'm sure at some point you've heard about an elevator pitch. Basically, you need to sell an idea, explain an idea, or talk about your story, right? In the time that it takes to take the average elevator ride, right? So anywhere from 30 seconds to 2 minutes. But basically, I always had my elevator pitch down to a T, because you tell your story so much and no one knows your story better than you. It's your story, right? So you get really good at telling your story when you practice. So don't be afraid to tell people what you want out of life, what you're trying to do, and see how you can collaborate potentially, or if they can point you in the right direction. Because if you know someone, for instance, one day you want to join the Foreign Service, it would probably be a good idea to talk to me, right? Okay, Michael, how did you get to where you are? What steps did you have to take? So if there's someone already doing what you want to do in the future, talk to them, because believe me, at some point, someone did the same for them. So people do generally want to pay it forward. So if someone was their mentor, right? So they're more willing to be your mentor because they remember what it was like, right? And they might see a little of themselves in you. So they're more likely to at least point you in the right direction, or tell you, you know what, talk to so-and-so. Or there's this opportunity, there's this internship. Because sometimes we don't know, right? We don't know where to look. We don't know where to start. But if they can point you in the right direction, it'll help you take that next step. So not only should you have your business card, you should also have an elevator pitch. And you should do your homework, meaning if I'm going to approach someone, I'm probably going to Google them and sort of have an idea who they are and bring it up. I remember one time I walked up to Mayor de Blasio at one of the events they went up to in Albany, and I knew he went to SEPA, and I was considering going to SEPA at Columbia. Oh, Mayor de Blasio, well, at the time he was public advocate de Blasio, I know you went to SEPA. I would love to hear about your experience. And it's something to break the ice, right? You want to have an icebreaker when you're going to approach someone. It doesn't matter who they are. Just don't be afraid to do it. I cannot stress this enough. Do an internship. Write it down, record a voice memo. You need to put it on your vision board. You need to do an internship, hands down, at least one, minimum. Because, okay, this is great. You have an education, but employers are also looking for experience. Where the heck are you gonna get experience if you don't have a job? An internship, right? I did my first internship at CUNY Citizenship Now. Then I went to DC and I did an internship at the US Committee for Refugees and Immigrants. Interesting story with this. I did have a stipend because I was in an honors program at CTNY, but that was basically just gonna, cover my living expenses. I had to go down to DC, but I asked around. We have the Charles Rangel Center at CCNY. They often provide housing, right? Because a lot of students in CUNY, right, we can't afford to just not have some kind of an income, right? Because we're not independently wealthy. We don't come from wealthy families. We need a place to live, right? We need a place to sleep. We need room and board. So I sent an email to someone at, the Charles Rangel Center. I said, this is what's going on. I need housing. They were like, guess what? We have a spot. If you take it though, you have to go or you're going to have to pay $5,000 back. But all I did was send an email. Granted, they knew who I was. I had a reputation that I had built on campus, but all I did was inquire through this email, and I got free housing for 8 weeks in DC, a beautiful apartment, way nicer than whatever I was living in at the time in New York. So a lot of times it's just asking questions, right? But I knew who to ask because I had learned the lay of the land. I had met a lot of people and I had asked a lot of questions. Then I went on to intern for Senator Gillibrand's office in New York. And just recently this summer, because I'm a Rangel Fellow, and as a Rangel Fellow, I basically am getting my graduate education paid for. So I got a full ride at Georgetown because I'm a Rangel Fellow, right? So part of the requirements as a Rangel Fellow is I had to do a summer internship, I had to do a congressional internship, and I did that at the office of Congresswoman Nydia Velázquez. And one of the great things about the connection to Congresswoman Velázquez is, she's also Puerto Rican. I had that connection to the island. I'm from New York City. She's a rep that reps the city, right? Lower East Side and Brooklyn. And so that was that connection, right? I had an amazing summer, basically, advocating for not only New York City constituents, but also for the people of Puerto Rico. And next summer, as part of this fellowship, I'm gonna go to an embassy abroad. Don't know where I'm going yet. I applied to 3 countries in Europe and 3 in Africa, and I have to see where I end up. But that's also part of this fellowship. Happy to talk to people offline more about the fellowship as well. And you might be asking, during this weird hybrid time, like it's hard to get an internship. There are a lot of virtual experiences right now, and a lot of them are paid. So I think a lot of people have made enough noise about the importance of paying interns. So for instance, congressional interns will now get paid if you do an entire semester or an entire summer. And then the State Department is also paying their interns. So those are opportunities you can look at. And also there are opportunities to go abroad in the State Department, and they do provide housing. So there are opportunities out there. My second study abroad trip was in South Korea. I also was able to get a full scholarship for this. It took some advocating though. So I got a partial scholarship. At the time, I had been selected as a Colin Powell Partners for Change fellow. And they had offered through this, it's called the Korea Foundation. So a lot of countries are using what is called soft power or public diplomacy. They want you to learn about their country so that you can then talk to other people, right? Especially other Americans about your experience. So I got a partial scholarship to pay for that, but I needed airfare. So at the time, some of you might be familiar with the University Student Senate, USS. I think it's what it's called, USSS. I might be saying it wrong now. University Student Senate, yeah, USSS. Basically, because I was in student government at Hostos, I then got sent to the university-wide, right, CUNY-wide Senate. And yes, USS. And I hadn't basically gotten cool I had built a rapport with some of the vice chancellors. And at the time, there was the vice chancellor for student life. And I told them, look, I got funding for most of this opportunity, but I still need airfare, right? And basically he told me, well, go back to CCNY, go back to City College, tell them about what you need, and then basically suggest that if they pay for half of your flight, I will make sure that the other half gets taken care of. And this is just a conversation that I had with the vice chancellor about what I was trying to do, why. And he also just knew me, right? He knew me because of my time at USS, and also because of all the things I had done. Basically, I had built this reputation, right? And I was able to get, this very, very expensive flight paid for. So it was $1,800, right? There was no way I was going to be able to pay for that. So just be mindful of these relationships that you're building. It's not that I'm suggesting you do things solely for your own motives, right? Because I think the importance of giving back to communities for giving back, right? But we're also hindered by our lack of resources, especially if you want to do something in an international landscape. You might need money, right, to take this flight, because I'm very willing and able to do things, right? But sometimes our lack of resources can hinder us. So I'm not saying, oh, do community service just so you get this prize at the end. No, I think you should do service because you love doing it, because you want to help people, right? But sometimes you can get a little further in your journey through these relationships that you're building, which is why I think networking is so important, if that makes sense. Do everything, right? So when next semester, hopefully when everything goes back live, when everything can be in person again, fingers crossed, do everything, go to every conference. That's me at the Millennium Campus Conference, which also deals with a lot of international opportunities, things like the MDGs, which have now become the SDGs for the United Nations, looking at the goals that they have for developing countries, things like access to water, among others. So I got exposure to all these things, right? Like international development and the importance and the role of the UN. And we got to go to Harvard on 2 occasions. Jason nominated me for a leadership award, but all these experiences happens because I just said yes to everything, right? I went to Albany every time there was an opportunity to go to Albany, learn more about, local and state politics. I participated in Model Senate, where I got to, address an entire room of people, acting like if I was a senator, with all these cameras on me. It was very nerve-wracking, but it was an amazing experience to be in a beautiful chamber and just, kind of feel what it's like to sit in the seats of these policymakers, these leaders. It was an amazing experience that I am so grateful for. So I recommend that you do everything, do Model Senate, run for student government, participate in Model UN, just do everything you can get your hands on. And that's more of me. Yeah, like I said, I did Model Senate. That's me addressing my fellow Model Senators. That's also me in Model UN. And then in this picture, I don't know, I just liked how we look. We looked like we looked like we were on a mission there with my fellow ambassadors. And then some of the scholarship opportunities I was able to get, Jason nominated me for the National Puerto Rican Day Parade Scholarship. Like I said, I did Colin Powell Partners for Change. I'm more than happy to talk to folks about these opportunities. Skadden Arps is now called, I think it's just called the Legal Studies Honors Program. They're no longer sponsored by Skadden Arps, but that's at City College. And then some of the other scholarships I was able to get. And this was also in conversations with some of the vice chancellors. You know, I would just tell them like, this is what's going on in my life. This is what I need help with. And they were able to point me in the right direction for things like scholarships, right? Because sometimes Pell and TAP is great, but sometimes it's not going to help you with all your needs. And then that was me with the late Colin Powell. And then just on the red carpet there when I got a scholarship. Okay, so I want to talk to you a little bit about opportunities, right? If you're interested in things like leadership, politics, you know, international affairs, CCNY right across the bridge there has the Colin Powell program. And it also has things like Weston, which helps you with internships, because as we know, not all internships are paid. They're getting a little better at paying interns, but sort of to supplement the fact that not all internships are paid, they do have programs like Weston that gives you a stipend so that you can participate in these great opportunities. There's Pickering, Wrangell, and Payne. So I'm currently a Wrangell fellow. Pickering is very similar, and that's for the Foreign Service. If you're interested in international development, there's Payne, which basically you become a Foreign Service officer with USAID, which is the federal agency that deals with international development. If you're looking to study abroad now, there's a scholarship called Gilman that can help you study abroad with, and you could do one of the CUNY opportunities. And again, all CUNY opportunities are generally open to all CUNY students. So if Hostos is not going to a country that you might be interested in, you can get something called an e-permit. And also you could always follow up with Jason. I'm sure he'll be very happy to explain the process to you. If you're interested in learning another language, there's Boren and the Critical Language Scholarship, as well as Fulbright if you're interested in doing research, or if you're interested in teaching English after you graduate, there's the English Teaching Assistantship. Those are great opportunities. Like I mentioned before, the US Department of State has a student internship program, and that's paid, and now also congressional internships are paid. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about my Peace Corps experience, right? I did youth development. I was a youth development facilitator. I served in Peru. I knew I wanted to go to a Spanish-speaking country. I already spoke Spanish, and I knew that it was just going to be helpful. I had an amazing experience. You know, actually, I wanted to just share a little side note. And sometimes it's about the little things, but I had a barber in Peru, and I think a lot of people know that you could get pretty close to your barber or your hairstylist because you see them, you know, at least once or more a month, right? And you're sitting there for however long, and you sometimes have these very like intense conversations. But while I was in Peru, I would often talk about, you know, Puerto Rico, especially because when I was in Peru, Puerto Rico got hit by Hurricane Maria. And during that time where I was working, you know, to help the Peruvian people, my people in Puerto Rico were suffering. So I knew there was something I had to do. So I basically was able to go to Puerto Rico as an American Cross volunteer. I took time off from Peace Corps to do a 21-day hardship deployment to Puerto Rico. And I was able to just talk to him about, you know, the resilience of the Puerto Rican people and how amazed I was by them. And he actually opened the barbershop and he named it Puerto Rico, because he was very inspired by, the sort of the experiences I shared with him. And that to me was very inspiring, because you just never know what kind of an impact you're going to have on someone, even just in conversations. And sometimes a lot of these things aren't necessarily tangible. You might not see it right away. Sometimes things take years, right, to show results. But I think that's one of the most important things I've learned about service is you just never really know what kind of an impact you're going to have, right? And I think that sometimes we get overwhelmed or by, the problems we might see in society. And you're like, oh, what is this one thing going to do? You'll be surprised what this one thing that you're doing is gonna like what kind of an impact it's gonna have. So this is just a little side note, but about the importance of service, and just you never know how you're gonna be an inspiration to someone. So I was in Ascope, La Libertad. There's a rural town sort of near the city called Trujillo, which is like central Peru. And this is my host family, which were amazing people. It's nice to see these photos. I actually lost my host mom about a year ago, so it's still kind of recent, but I have so much love for my host family. I lived with them for 2 years. That's a long time. So some of the integration did you get to do? I don't know if any of you have heard of Peace Corps. You might be interested in participating in Peace Corps. But you get to live like a local, right? One of the 3 goals of Peace Corps is to live like your host country national would live, right? Eat the same food they would eat, listen to the same music they will listen to, experience what it's like to live in that culture. And that's why it's so important to be there for 2 years. So in this picture, you see we're all dressed up like with silly hats and balloons and wigs. So it's called La Hora Loca, which is something you do at a party, especially on birthdays. Basically, there's a time where it's like, okay, it's time for La Hora Loca. And it's like a whole hour where you just kind of like wild out, as they would say in the Bronx, and have a good time. And they also dunk your face in the cake. So they did that to me for sure. These are some of my students. I worked with elementary school students, and it was a great experience. It's interesting because I don't think that I necessarily felt like I had the best connection with kids initially until I went on this experience, and I have much more like I feel like I got so much more patience and sort of like empathy and understanding for kids. Yeah, it definitely helped with my emotional maturity. So that was a very good experience, I would say. So I had this one youth group, right, where they were at risk youth. They basically had gotten in some trouble along the way. And I was able to work with them specifically on, career planning their future. What do you need to do to, register for school? How can we make your goals come to fruition? And I feel like this was probably the most productive thing that I did. It was basically with what we would equate to the district attorney's office, right? It's the equivalent. And I worked with these kids. They definitely did give me a hard time at first, but I felt like I gained their trust, and it was a really good experience. I got to teach summer school, which is probably one of the major highlights. I also got to teach English. I really enjoyed teaching English. Yeah, it was definitely one of the highlights. Got to do a lot of group activities, a lot of games. It was fun. It was definitely fun. These are some of my counterparts. I worked with leaders, psychologists, a lot of people that were very influential in students' lives. I had really good experiences. I met really great people. I also had a youth group. We did a little exchange where I was like, okay, in the US, people, when they go camping, they not only do they do campfires, they do these things called s'mores. So, I got all the stuff to make s'mores and they had an amazing time. Also, growing up in the city, it's not like I often did campfires or made s'mores. So it was something cool for me too, because it's not something that I necessarily did much, right, growing up. So some of the recommendations I definitely want to give you, and then I'm also happy to talk more during Q&A, but if you haven't become a member, because I know sometimes people join or they might attend meetings here and there, but they're not, fully committed to the Academy, I cannot stress enough the impact that, the Hostos Leadership Academy has had in my life. So I cannot stress more like the importance of this academy, right? If you have doubts, like don't, because it's an amazing experience. So do it. Go to all the events, go to all the workshops, go to all the conferences, and apply to everything, right? Apply to everything, even if you don't feel like you're qualified, because sometimes we second guess ourselves or we have imposter syndrome that we all suffer from. Sometimes we don't think that we're qualified, but you have a story, right? Tell your story and give it your best try, right? I didn't get the Rankin Fellowship the first time I applied, right? I was a finalist for Pickering the first time around and I didn't make it through, but I gained a lot of experience from interviewing. I knew what the process was like. I had a better idea the second time around, right? So don't be afraid to apply to things more than once. Same thing goes for Scadden. I didn't get Scadden the first time. I got Scadden the second time. So if I didn't learn from those experiences and I didn't try again, right? I'm telling you that when I got into Hostos, when I went back, I was on academic probation, right? And then I ended up graduating with a very good GPA and then going on to getting scholarships and getting into an honors program. So, that's part of my story, right? And that's part of what's made me who I am. And I tell that story because it's about resilience. It's about, how to face adversity. How have you overcome adversity? Panels want to hear about that, right? Because we're all human, we all fail. It's what we do with that failure and how we learn and how we grow. So that's part of my story, right? You have your story. So tell your story and the sky's the limit. Go through the scholarship booklet. Jason, I don't know if you're still doing the scholarship booklet, but ask him about it. Travel abroad, study abroad, leave your comfort zone. There are a bunch of CUNY-wide opportunities. Get your passport, right? So that you're ready. You're ready for when the opportunity comes. Do at least one internship. Cannot stress this enough. Do at least one internship so you can build your resume. Study a new language, learn public speaking skills, learn about parliamentary procedure, learn how to act and, let them know that you're no one to sneeze at. And remember your heritage, remember your identifiers, remember where you're from. I, always talk about the Bronx, always talk about where I'm from. Make sure people pronounce your name right. Those are your identifiers. Like, correct people if they say your name wrong. It's part of your legacy. It's part of who you are. And some of the opportunities out there are like AmeriCorps Vista. I ended up working for AmeriCorps after I got done with Peace Corps. It's basically like a domestic Peace Corps, and it includes a stipend, and it also includes a scholarship that you can use to pay back student loans, or you can use the money for future education. So basically, if you say you want to take a gap year, I'm actually very pro gap years. If you don't know what you want to do, gap years sometimes are good to figure out what you want to do, right? So in between high school or in between, your associates, if you decide you want to take a gap year, a good measure would be to do something like AmeriCorps or AmeriCorps Vista. It also gives you non-compete eligibility, which is something you can use to apply for federal jobs. I used non-compete eligibility to get my government job when I was done with Peace Corps. And like I said, you could get that education award. Peace Corps, I'm happy to talk about Peace Corps. It does include a stipend and it does include medical coverage. It is a 2-year commitment, which sounds like a lot, but 2 years go by pretty fast, let me tell you. If you're interested in doing things in New York, there's New York Cares. That website is a good resource to find volunteer opportunities. And if you're interested in teaching English abroad, there's things like the JET program in Japan, and other countries as well have opportunities. Okay, so circling back to what we're talking about, what are your top 5 that you do when you have a problem? I would suggest as an alternative, and I think everything that was shared was really great, right? I think self-care is really important. If you don't take care of yourself, one time I heard someone put it like this. You know how you're on an airplane and they say you have to put your mask on first before you put it on someone else, right? If you're not taking care of yourself, if your cup does not runneth over, then you don't have anything to give, right? So I do think self-care is very important. But sometimes, and I find this in my case, it's better sometimes to get the focus off of yourself, like get yourself off of your mind and help other people, right? Because sometimes you just see, like, you think your problem is so big, but when you remove yourself from the situation or you see what you have versus someone else, right? You become more grateful, and gratitude is very important. Gratitude is also going to be good for your health, for your mental wellness. So sometimes just, getting off your behind and helping someone else in need will make you all the better. And sometimes it'll give you clarity so that you can figure out how to fix your problem. Or sometimes it might make you realize that, you know what, I don't know if I have a problem at all. So that's just an alternative I wanted to share with you. And just the mantra, right, that I tell myself all the time, right? I've got this, you've got this, and don't let anyone tell you that you can't make a difference. And yes, I'm happy to take questions.
Sticky, icky, sticky bubble gum.
Oops. And Jason, back to you.
Michael's playing all my videos from my, let me see if I can do this. There we go. Okay. Now I'm super dark. Yes, please. So before, now I'm in the shadows. Okay, here we go. Like lighting 101. So first of all, Mike, thanks. And Miles just came in here, and you played the video and then he woke up. So it's like the whole thing. So first of all, let me say this because every time Michael does this, he skimps on the important part. And what he should have said and how he should start every workshop that he starts here is, I know the way to get everything that you ever wanted out of CUNY and just about anywhere else. And that's the bottom line. I mean, when I met Michael, he was kind of distraught, actually. He was kind of like in a place where he didn't know where he was going to go next. His brother had graduated from the program that he really wanted to be a part of. He told you about his own personal experiences in college. And he was kind of like, do I stay at Hostos or do I not? Am I correct or am I wrong? And so much like a lot of the folks who actually became members of our group and moved on to do extraordinary things, he took it as an opportunity for himself to say, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to put every ounce of myself into everything that I do here. And when he says that, he went to see Senior Vice President Charterborn, who's still the Senior Vice President at the college, about, asking about funding for trips, or when he went to one of the vice chancellors at, in Albany and said, this is what I'm doing, and can you help? These are real things that you all can do. So that whatever it is that you look, and you can put all of these obstacles in front of yourself and say, these are not things that I can do. I can't go there. I don't have the money. This is where I live, and I don't see me ever being able to live somewhere else, or I have a family, or any other things that you put as obstacles to yourself. Michael put it all to the side. He just said, okay, I'm just going to ask. And the worst thing that, and as he said, and as everybody always says, and we always take it for granted, is the worst thing that anybody can ever say is no. And I'm sure he got a lot of no's along the way, but he also got a lot of yeses, and it provided a lot of opportunities. And, he annoys the hell out of me every couple of months because he wants me to write a new letter of recommendation for him. And I'm happy to do it. As I say to all of you, once you join the organization, I feel obligated to work with you for the rest of the time that you or I or both of us are on the planet. And so Michael probably has more recommendation letters for me than anybody else in the history of the Academy. But again, he's used it to his benefit to go to all the places that he wanted to go, to get into the doors that he needed to get into, or just as a secondary reference for something to help him along his route. And I think Michael can probably tell you about, the people that he's met along the way as well, from our group and from the other groups, and how those people have impacted him, and how the shared experience of going through some of these things has also benefited them. As I said, when Michael joined, his cousin was a member of the program, and was benefiting from the program and doing great things as part of our group. And so Michael sort of just jumped in. And then there were a lot of other people in that group who were doing some great things as well in different areas. So Michael's journey is to go into public service. And we have some people who've done that, and we have some people who want to do that who are here. But there's a lot of other things that you can do as well. And what I think the core value that I always come back to with Michael, and what he talks about in these workshops, and he's been doing them for a long time now with us, is the idea of volunteering and how powerful it can be. Because when we went, he talked about, we don't do the Thanksgiving thing anymore, Michael, because they started to charge us to volunteer, so we couldn't do it. So we started doing our own. And that's what we just did last week for Thanksgiving. We bought the food, we packaged it. We worked with One Stop. They bought the chickens, and we gave it out. And we gave out to 125 people, and a lot of folks who are here now were at the event last week. But it's Michael was at every volunteer activity that we ever did. And whether it was Brooklyn, or whether it was Manhattan, or whether it was the Bronx, and he was just there, and he put his time in. And what he'll tell you, and what I think sort of resonates with people who do this, is that it's really not that hard. It's like you go there, you plant a seed, you give out a book, you talk to somebody, you press a button, whatever it is, you put somebody's jacket on, you're kind to somebody, you wheel a wheelchair into a room, and you do it for 4 hours, and it doesn't feel like you've actually done anything for that time, but you've made that impact. You've left an indelible mark on somebody. And as Mike highlighted so wonderfully, and with the barbershop, and how just a conversation sometimes leads to something that's extremely powerful and moving and life altering for somebody. So I think that I always come back to that that when you talk about that, that's really important. I mean, I'm proud to know you. I think you're doing extraordinary things. I always say that. He also took on roles that most people would not take on. He was the chair of our winter workshop committee. He signed on to be head delegate of our Model United Nations team. He took on the role of vice chair of the chair of the Student Senate, which was at the time was not an easy gig, because the president wanted to do it her way, and everybody else was wanting it to do their way, and he had to navigate between all of that. It's gotten much smoother now. I think Jose will say that it's a lot smoother these days than it was back then. But so Mike was always up for doing that. So I think that it's easy enough to see yourself in his shoes too. Like it's not that far of a reach. Like here's somebody who had his own challenges, overcame them, and put his best foot forward by actually just putting his foot into the mix all the time. So I think that's what always resonates with me about your story, Mike. And there were some people who asked some questions in the chat of me privately. If you want to ask Michael now, you can, because we have a few minutes here. Or if you have any questions that came up, or you want to, ask me anything. And I see 2 alumni raising their hands. So Fatima, you were here longer, so we're gonna let you go first.
Hello, everybody. I apologize for not turning on the camera. I'm actually on pajamas, you know how it is. But I do look that pretty, like in the picture. So I'm in pajamas working, trying to go to the treadmill, but it seems that every time I try to go to the treadmill, I have work to do. Anyways, Michael, thank you so much for sharing your story. You are such an inspiration. I think you graduated a year before me. You graduated in 2016, right? 15, I mean.
From CCNY, I graduated from Hostos 2012.
In 2012. So it was so that's the year no. I joined in 2014. So, but I know you've been around. And you always have something new to share. I want to emphasize all your recommendations are great. Nothing is going to happen if you just wait for it. If you spend your time keeping up with the Kardashians, I'm not saying that any of you is doing that, but you understand, spending too much time on social media and things like that. When you look at the time tracking, you see, oh my God, I spend 4 days, 4 hours a day. That's not productive. You gotta track just those time, the time that you spend on social media, because I can assure you that Michael and other of the alumni and current students who are doing well and applying for things and getting things, they don't get it the first time they apply. Most of the time they get it because they keep persistent. And then at the nowadays, Michael is in a position, and other alumni as well, that they don't even need to apply for a job. The jobs comes to them. People come to them to say, hey, can you help me out with this? What are your suggestions about X, Y, and Z? I would love you to have you in my team. What do you want? I create a job. I create a position for you. So, and I'm sure because, he has experience. He's been traveling. He's been applying for things. And you have to believe that you're worthy, that it can happen, because the boss, our boss, right? Our boss, Jason, mentioned a letter of recommendation, saying recently I emailed him. We are in contact often. But recently, a couple of months ago, I asked him for a letter of recommendation. And of course, I needed the letter of recommendation like in the next 24 hours, because you know how it is, right? In the next 30 hours, I'm like, boss, I need this. I don't know if Michael is in the same boat. Maybe he's more organized. So I got a letter of recommendations, and I have gotten a few, and I have gotten accepted. I went to Harvard Business School for a summer program. Jason gave me a letter. Jason reviewed my essays. He reviewed my essays, and gave me letters of recommendation. Also, I recently applied for a new scholarship of thousands of dollars, and I got it. And that was like 24 hours. I'm like, boss, I need this. And I got it. So what I'm trying to say is that if you follow, he put together a beautiful, beautiful PowerPoint. I took screenshots, and I'm doing a master's in information system. It's a little bit farther, we are not in the same field, but I took screenshots because I would like to learn a new language. I would like to see, maybe recommend that to my cousins, to other friends. I take the screenshot for me, but also for other people. And later I can, connect with him. Hey, how do you do this and that? And that's how you come to these workshops with Jason, and you need to take advantage of this. You may not have a question now, but you may have a question in a couple of weeks or months or anything else. And lastly, I recently connected with someone who provided a workshop, because this person, she provides a service, and I took that workshop back in 2016. No, in 2015, and I reached out to her a couple of months ago, and I said, hey, I want to pay for your service, because now I'm in a position to tell this person, hey, I saw your work, you work with Jason, and I would like to use your services. And that's what you do. It doesn't happen all the time. You may not have the resources, you may not have the best opportunities out there, but people. And there's a wealth of information out there. So I hope you took screenshots, and I hope you put a plan this weekend to work on everything that Michael told you and that the boss told us to do. Okay?
Thank you for taking.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I just want to add something in regards to recommenders. I make sure to keep in touch with my recommenders at least once every 6 months, right? It might be an update like, hi, this is what I'm up to now. Now that, the holidays are coming up, I'm going to probably send a happy holiday, happy New Year's, right, to the chancellor. So that they don't forget about you, so that it doesn't seem like, oh, this person's only hitting me up. And not that it, we have busy lives, I get it. But once every 6 months or so, you can shoot an email to someone and say, hey, how you doing? This is what I'm up to. Hope all is well. So that they don't forget about you. And so the next time you ask for that recommendation letter, right? Also, you should ask at least a month in advance. I get it. It's 24 hours, it's a small window. Jason's cool, but some of your other recommenders might not be so nice. So especially professors and other people that get really busy, give yourself a month, right? Because if you're working on your essay 24 hours before, well, at least you're in control of that, but you're not in control of when your recommender is going to send that letter. And sometimes there's a deadline, right? So because that is outside of your control, I would recommend at least give yourself a month to let them, compose a letter. If they've recommended sent letters for you, they already have a letter, right? So they just probably have to tweak it. But that's something that I'm going to recommend. Also, I cannot stress the business card enough. I have my box right here of my 500 business cards. So always have that. But yeah, as far as recommenders, make sure to keep in touch. And if there was a professor that you really vibed with, you got a good grade in that class, keep in touch. Same thing goes for mentors and the like.
All right, German, you want to say something?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Good afternoon, Jason Lipfield. Good afternoon. I replied to your email earlier this afternoon. All right.
Hey, did you want to say something to Mike today?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Mr. Cruz, good afternoon. Good afternoon, Michael.
Chairman.
First and foremost, I like the way that how you presented this workshop series earlier today. Very formal, very informatic. You and I go way back. Although we haven't had a chance to just to communicate fluently, regardless of how our busy schedule was, rather if it's completing a tutorial session, whether if it's completing different series and different appointments and things like that. I have a few questions, and for me to know the differences between doing community service or attending conferences within the city of New York and throughout parts of the world and parts of the country. My question to you is this: what was the difference between your experience? How could I put this? Between your volunteer experience here within the city of New York and meeting with political officials or political leaders here in New York, and meeting with political leaders and people throughout parts of the world, based on your volunteer experience in traveling and tourism, right through study abroad. And
I think you're muted now. You got muted there for a sec.
sorry about that. How would I be able just to gain that experience once I pursue to another degree when I go back to school in the future? And how would I be able just to get recommended?
Okay, so I feel like there's a two-parter there. So just to address that first part, I think it's about culture, right? So when you first get to a new place and you have to observe, right? And I think it's culture can be many things, right? It could be a corporate company's culture, it could be the culture of the community or wherever you are. So for instance, when I went to Peru, I had to realize that they don't operate right in the same context as the US. So in the US, typically, right, and I don't want to generalize, but in my experience, if I was late somewhere, I would sneak to the back, kind of like didn't want to interrupt, and because there was a speaker and I wanted to be respectful. While in Peru, many times, didn't matter when you walked in, you had to say hello, you had to say excuse me, and you basically had to say a general like, good morning, good afternoon, blah, blah, thank you so much, I'm late because the bus was blah, blah, blah. And so there was a whole different culture that I had to learn, right? So it's about observe, listen, and then sort of try to emulate what you see. So don't come with that US lens, right, necessarily, but this could be true out in a US context as well, because sometimes we have regional differences. Just pay attention to how other people act, right? And then try to emulate that to show respect. So at least that's how I would address, anyone, especially in a leadership role. I would usually use their title, which is something I do in the US as well. But I feel like in Peru, at least, it was even more formal than it is here. So you have to pay attention to your surroundings, and that's how you act accordingly. So I would say that was the difference between my normal, like everyday US context versus when I've gone to other countries and studied abroad. Like in the Dominican Republic, in order for me to go to school, I couldn't go with shorts, right? Like just learn certain things. Like they wouldn't let me in the building if I was wearing shorts.
That's my family's homeland, DR. That's my family's homeland.
So just pay attention to like norms, protocol, rules, and you'll be fine. But give yourself a grace period because you also have to learn the culture when you first get there. And then in terms of, getting recommended, I've already said, keep in touch with your recommenders, but also just go for it. Go for those experience, build that resume, volunteer, try it out, and then you'll get to know people and you'll get those recommendations and you'll learn about those opportunities along the way.
I'm still getting the emails from New York Cares also, Mr. Cruz, just so you know.
Glad to hear.
Good luck to you.
Thank you. You too. Jason, you're muted.
Oh, I said thank you, German, and I wanted to say thank you, Michael. We're coming down to the end here. I just want to say thank you for always being willing to do this and keeping me abreast of everything that's going on in your life. You know, I value here. Part of the one thing I probably don't say enough is that part of my learning experiences has been your learning experiences. So that when I talk to Jose or Brian or Sabrina or Annie or somebody who's on campus now about my experiences, it's a learning experience that I had with you, right? With you or Mark or Melissa or Krisney or lots of other people, Rudy, a lot of other people who were around in the early days, who taught me about the things that I needed to know so that I was better educated on how to deal with things as we moved along. I mean, I learned a lot from going to the Model UN in New York. I learned a lot from doing all the stuff that we did in Albany. And so I want to thank you personally for making all that stuff possible for me and helping me to be a better professional as well. So thank you for that. We, of course, wish you the best of luck as a group along your mission. As I referenced before, get in touch with Samantha, of course, because you know you guys in the same venue. And then I think Bridget and Fatimata probably will follow up with you after today, you know, to get some more information about the journey that they're on. So it's always great to have somebody who's already down the road a little bit and can give you some information about the stuff that they do. But I think that also the one final thing I'll say about this is your ability, and Fatima mentioned it as well, your ability to tell people to get out of their comfort zone and be willing to sort of like expose themselves to things that they never ever thought that they were willing to do before is a great reminder to all of us to sort of pursue our dreams, to aspire to achieve our goals. And so thank you for doing that and for being here with us.
Thank you, Jason. This is always an honor and a privilege. It's always great to come back home, whether it's in person or virtually. Looking forward to the day when it's in person again. But, you know, I am very grateful for you. You've definitely been a cheerleader. You've been a mentor. You've been a soundboard. You've been a support system for me, and I'm very grateful. So that's, you know, that whenever you ask for anything, I'm always like, what do you need? So, and I know it's reciprocal, so I'm so grateful for you. Just wanted to let folks know that I shared my LinkedIn in the chat as well as my email. I'm very happy also to share the slides so that people can look at some of the resources I put there. Also happy to, you know, later on in your journey, if you have questions, if you decide to apply to something that I've applied to, or, you know, you need help with your essays or what have you, I'm definitely feel happy to reach out because I'm happy to give feedback as well.
So thank you, Michael. Usually I call out everybody's name, but we've gone over time. I want to remind everybody next week is our last workshop for the fall semester. I also sent in the email the survey for the workshops for the fall semester, so please fill that out. And that's how you get your certificates for the fall. And I look forward to seeing you next week, and everybody have a great weekend. I hope it gets a little bit warmer than it is right now. I don't know what it's like in DC, but here it's a little bitter and a little cold. So we need a little warm. All right. So I will see you all next week. Great to see you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for the alumni who are showed up. And Felix, thank you so much for being here as well. Really appreciate
My
it.
pleasure. Thank you very much, guys. This is really helpful.
Thank
Michael,
you.
thank you again for a great talk and
you.
spending your time with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Felix. It's always good to see
Thank
you.
you. Appreciate
Thank you, boss.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Everybody,
Michael.
have a
so
good
much,
Have a
weekend.
great weekend,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Mr.
See you
Cruz.
Thank you
soon.
so
All
much.
right,
Thank
Michael.
you.
Take care. Bye.
Boss, are you going to the office? He left already?
I'm right, I'm right here. What do you, wait, we're still on camera.
Okay, okay,
You can
Jason.
text me, Fatima, okay?
okay. I'll text you.
All right,
Bye.
Jeremy, good to see you.
Jason,
Bye.
don't forget to email me the information.
I
based
did,
on what you told me about.
already, German. You should have it in your email, okay?
Yeah. Also, can
Thanks so
you
much.
send me the email that told me before?
Yes, Jessica, I will send you, okay?
Okay. Thank you so much.
All right, have a great day. Okay.
Thank
Have a good
you.
weekend.
Bye.